Greetings, everybody from Dayton, Ohio. I'm Amelia.
Hi, I'm Tom. Glad to be here again.
And this is Monday with Jesus. And we are not only sending this out on a Monday, but we're actually recording it on a Monday. How about that? All right. So the story we have today is the story for Easter Sunday, the resurrection according to the Gospel of Luke. Tom will tell us the story.
So, this is the story. On the first day of the week, the women went out to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared at early dawn. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they didn't see the body of Jesus. While they were perplexed about this, two men suddenly appeared, were dressed in dazzling clothes, and they were terrified and bowed their heads. But the men said to them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here, but has been raised." And they said, "Remember his words that he said to you while he was still in Galilee, that he must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the third day to be raised." And they remembered his words. Returning from the tomb, they told the 11 and the others who were with them what had happened. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them. But their words appeared to the apostles and those who were with them to be an idle tale, and they didn't believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, and stooping, he looked in, and he saw the linen cloths all by themselves. And he went home, wondering what had happened.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah. So I love the way the story starts out with this real clear indication of the setting, the time and the place, and these details. So it was the first day of the week, which we assume is Sunday. Would that have been what they thought was the first day of the week too?
Yeah.
Sunday
Yeah.
morning.
Sabbath was the seventh day.
Okay.
Saturday.
So this is the first day. At not only at dawn, but at early dawn. So is that like before the sun comes up, or but early dawn? Yeah. Okay. And they came to the tomb. So this is where they are. This is where much of the story takes place in. And they brought spices. So why did they bring spices?
Well, they were going to anoint his body, and they hadn't been able to do it on Friday night, on Friday after he died. And so they had prepared the spices on Friday to go and anoint, cover his body with spices, a kind of embalming that they did in the ancient world.
Okay. So I have some other sort of specific questions, and we'll talk about some of the maybe the larger questions that the story raises.
Yeah.
All right, so they don't find the body, and they're perplexed. I guess they expected to find the body, and there was no body there. And then they see these two men who were in dazzling white. What's the significance of that?
Well, they were clearly divine messengers. The dazzling white clothes was a sign of there being angels. What would have been the term that would be used. And it is a motif that was established at the birth narrative. To the shepherds, suddenly there appeared an angel of the Lord, a messenger from God.
So these messengers terrify the women. I mean, that is the natural response to seeing messengers from God. They actually bow all the way down to the ground. The angels say, why are you looking for the living among the dead? How do you hear the angels saying that to them?
Well, I think that they were, I don't know, the word that comes to mind is they were cool. They were helping the women to calm down so that they could hear this. And they were asking this in a gentle way. Why are you seeking the living among the dead? So it wasn't a mocking question, but rather a question of, why?
Yeah. Yeah. And then is sort of the announcement, he's risen. He's not here. Yeah.
Right. He's not here.
He's not here.
He's risen.
Yeah. And then we get this really interesting further comments by the men in dazzling white clothes, telling the women to remember what Jesus had said to them.
Right.
When I went through this again, and it says, and what they say to remember is basically that Jesus's passion prophecy, that he was going to be crucified. Let's see, what's exactly handed over to sinners and be crucified. And then on the third day, rise again. I mean, I don't remember when that story was earlier in the Gospels. I don't remember women being present. So that was interesting to me. I mean, do we just assume then that the women clearly had heard this as well?
Yes.
They were probably around more than we're aware of when Jesus is talking to the disciples.
That's the implication.
Okay. So that's to me a significant implication.
Yes.
Yeah. They had heard these important teachings and words of Jesus also, and that now they're being asked to remember them.
And that they were part of the group of the disciples. There were the 12, now 11, after Judas' defection.
Yeah.
But that there were others with them, and that was characteristic of what would have been throughout Jesus' ministry. This is the implication.
Right. And part of what they're told to remember is how Jesus had said he would be handed over to sinners. Who are the sinners that Jesus was referencing?
Well, in the prophecy, it's the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. It's those who were opposed to him and who were implicated in collaboration with the Romans during the war. And so they were regarded as, by the composers of the Gospel of Luke and so on, as sinners, as ones who had created and caused a great evil, great crime.
Yeah. Okay, so the women hear this, then they go back. It says actually returned. So apparently they came from having been with the men. Again, as you were saying,
With
is
angels, right?
Yeah, part of the group of disciples, and it's 11 men, and then and others. So that was interesting to me too, that there's a larger group.
All the rest.
Yeah, all the rest, right? And they tell them, what they've learned, what they've witnessed, and then been told, but the men don't believe. It's an idle. What they say, they seem to them like an idle tale.
Yes, that's.
But what's all that about?
Well, it's a motif that is distinctive to Luke's story of the women being commissioned to tell, and they go and tell, but they're not believed. And that's picked up then in the Emmaus story when they're on the road and Jesus is walking with them, and the disciple says, some of the women in our group went out and didn't find the body and came back. They'd seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. But some of the men went out and they found it as the women said, but, and Jesus says, you fools, you fools, and slow to believe all that the prophets have said. So Jesus is an early feminist here, and is identifying the women as telling the truth, and as they were the ones who were uniquely commissioned by the angels to announce the resurrection.
Yeah. Peter must be at least thinking maybe there was something to what they were saying, or at least he wants to go check things out for himself, because he goes to the tomb. And then in the NRSV that I read, it says that he returned. He came back amazed.
Yeah.
You said he came back wondering.
Right.
Which was interesting. Why did you change the translation there?
Well, I changed it because amazed implies that he was amazed at the message of the resurrection and believed it, in which case his going home doesn't make any sense. The word is ambiguous, the verb, and another translation is wonder. And so that implies that he is puzzled about this, that he's wondering what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what is implicit in his going home, is he wondered what had happened, and he went back to his house. He wouldn't have gone back to his house if he was amazed that the resurrection had happened and that that's what he believed and understood.
Where would he have gone?
If he had been convinced of the resurrection, he would have gone back and confirmed with all of them that the women were right.
Oh, okay. So he didn't go back to where the disciples were. He went to his home. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. I didn't picture that one right. Thank you. That's good. Okay. Now some bigger questions. Could this story be factually true?
Well, it depends on what factually true means. There are 4 different stories of the resurrection, and each of them is different. So in terms of a kind of classic posture of inerrancy, it's not possible for all 4 of them to be factually a description of what actually happened. There are differences in the women. So Joanna is only present in Luke's story. Mary Magdalene is the only one who is present in John's story. There are different angels, 2 angels, different places, 1 angel in Mark and Matthew.
And Matthew is sitting on the rock, isn't he?
Yeah,
There was an earthquake, and the guards are there.
Came down and sat on the stone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, so what's distinctive about Luke's version?
Well, a central part of what is distinctive is first the focus on memory. It's an invitation to the women to remember. It's also an invitation to the listeners, to those who have heard the earlier part of the story, is to remember Jesus prophesied this. And so they remembered his words is a statement that gets maximum emphasis in Luke. So there's a focus on remembering, on memory, on the memory of the story. But there's also this distinctive motif of the women and of their not being believed, and of then that being further developed in the Emmaus story, and that the women are fully vindicated.
Yeah.
Jesus vindicates them.
Yeah.
Says, you stupid men, you fools, why? Why didn't you believe this?
Well, to men's credit, they did include this story about how foolish they were in the canon. So
that's right.
That's
one of the things that is very interesting about this story, is that this is a story that they told on themselves. It's like Peter's denial. The only way we would have known this is if that story had been, continued, and if Peter, in relation to that, had told the story about what he did and how that happened with the cock crowing and his remembering. So also here, this is a story that was told by men on themselves, and
that does lend credibility to it.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to the question of truth, if it's not sort of factual, historical, if you had a video camera, there couldn't have been quite like this truth, at least some of them. What kind of truth are we talking about here? Any kind of truth?
Well, there's truth in the truth of the story. The story is, in each case, an experience of the discovery of the resurrection. Each of them has a distinctive take on that experience. But in each case, it is a story that renders a dimension of the experience of the resurrection. And so each of them is true in their distinctive ways as they come off as being true. They're not true in the sense that we would reconstruct that in terms of historical verifiability. Each of them is distinctive in the facts of what they say, what they tell. But there are also major lines of continuity, the most important being the resurrection.
Right.
But also a tomb, the stone rolled back, the women going and discovering this and being told by a divine messenger. So there are elements of continuity between the four stories.
So what exactly is the meaning of resurrection?
That could be a book. There have been
right.
a lot of books
about what's 2 minutes or less.
Right. So in a couple of sentences, resurrection meant the victory of the powers of good over the powers of evil. The powers of sin and death are defeated by Jesus' resurrection. And this is a reflection of the eschatological, the apocalyptic context of the Gospels in relation to the powers. And so this is a victory of the spiritual powers of good, of life, over against the powers of sin and death, of evil. So the significance of the resurrection is that Jesus' way of nonviolence, his way of love, is vindicated by his victory in the resurrection. So it's a sign of the victory of his spirit, of his way, in contrast to the ways of the world, the ways of the powers of evil.
So not only are the women vindicated, but more importantly, Jesus's teachings, his ministry, all the kinds of things he did, and his way of dealing with people is vindicated.
Right.
In the resurrection. God is saying, this is the way, this is what I mean, this is what my will looks like.
Right.
Okay.
And that the kingdom of God that he proclaims is a kingdom that includes everybody. Gentiles as well as Jews.
Right.
So the love of the enemy is a striking dimension of Jesus' ministry, and that is vindicated in the resurrection.
So it seems pretty obvious why this story might have significance for our efforts, for ministries of peace and justice today. But would you name them for us, please?
Well, I'd say a first one is the vindication of women and of paying attention to the experience of women and of recognizing the tendency of men to regard women's testimony as an idle tale. So justice ministries in relation to the centrality of the testimony and experience of women, is an implicit dimension of this. The even bigger picture is that having confidence and acting in confidence that the powers implicit in the resurrection, the powers of good, the powers of righteousness, that those powers are victorious over the powers of evil, and that we can operate and develop ministries of justice in confidence rather than out of fear or hesitation. So the development of ministries of justice and calling attention to injustice, that is a part of the resurrection.
Wow. That's a good word to end on. We hope you all have a blessed Easter, and well as paying attention to all the stories that lead up to Easter, which make the Easter story such an impactful one and meaningful one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Glorious Easter.